Guys, welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Louis Shulman with us. He's co-founder at Orbit Metrics. We're going to talk about podcasting. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about founding exciting businesses such as Orbit Metrics. Louis, can you tell us briefly a bit more about yourself and about your company?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the invite. Always love doing podcasts. Orbit Metrics is a data and analytics consulting firm that's kind of gone a little bit full stack in terms of total IT services. So really, it's more of an IT services firm with a specialty in data analytics and custom software engineering. Recently, lots of people have been coming to us for custom AI projects as well, right? Everyone's really excited about ChatGPT and want to find ways to integrate that with all of their data. And so we've been doing some fun work there. And that's more or less what we do. So we help a huge variety of companies, a lot of companies primarily that all have big digital advertising budgets. So a lot of e-commerce companies, a lot of marketing agencies right on behalf of the clients that they work with, but also some kind of more traditional mid-market enterprise companies as well come to us for help with their data.
Quite fascinating. We're going to get more into this in a tad, but first, two things fascinated me when first seeing you. First, your background, and second, how young you are. So how old are you?
I'm 23, turning 24 in like a week and a half.
And you're like hyper successful. So it's like looking at your background there, speech and debate and a bunch of other interesting stuff that you did. Like, why are you that way? Why are you so ambitious?
I think a lot of it comes back to sometimes questions are easier to answer right in the opposite way. I'm not happy right the other way. I'm someone who one of my very fundamental needs is growth and learning and progress. And without that, I don't feel well. And boredom is also a very unpleasant emotion for me. So it's like we generally strive to structure our lives in ways that make us enjoy our lives. And for me, fortunately, I tend to enjoy things that are good for me, if that makes sense. And
Makes a lot of
so
sense.
that's like a high level summary of it as well. And then also I think one of my biggest strengths is I've always been someone, I don't know about always, but for a longer time, at least younger than most people, I come to terms with how the world is, or at least I try to. I try to like see the world accurately. And I realized that seeing the world how you want to see it is way less advantageous than seeing the world how it probably is. So a lot of people, right, have a nagging thought in their head that's like, is my job that secure? And I'm not really in control of like how much money I'm going to make, but they'll probably take care of me. And I just realized that was just all not the case, right? That I was like, I saw, freshman year of college that like best case scenario is I get a decent job or I'm dependent on someone else to dictate if I make more money. And, I also realized very early on that oftentimes the reward for success meaning like a raise or promotion or going from an individual contributor to a manager, from a manager to a VP, is a worse life. Like your demands are increased. You have to work harder and you don't make actually that much more money. So I kind of just realized and internalized, and a lot of people are like, well, not really. Like, they hear other people be like, don't take this path that you're going to end up unhappy. And they're like, that's not true. I'm different. I basically was like, they're probably right. I should actually listen to them. And so I realized that my only alternative was entrepreneurship. So I just started early as well.
Right. It's kind of tricky. At this stage of my life right now, I'm more into questioning everything because I don't see a lot of value in classic advice that you'll find in business books or podcasts, for example. So I guess it kind of varies, but yeah, good advice, generally speaking. You're also a writer. So I learned tons just by writing and kind of sparring with myself, with my own ideas, observing both sides of an argument, playing devil's advocate. How has writing improved your brain in the last couple of years?
It's so incredibly essential. It's like, I can tell as a podcast host and as a writer who that I talk to that writes and who publishes content. You can just tell because you're like, wow, this person's ideas are extremely well thought through and extremely detailed, and they have really relevant examples top of mind immediately, right? There's just certain speech patterns that you can tell if someone's a writer or if they're not a writer. And that's something I observed from doing close to 200 interviews where I'd say probably a pretty even split, right? Half my guests write, half of them maybe just like run their businesses and don't have a writing practice. And I always found that the most fascinating communicators and the most interesting guests more often than not were the writers, because they basically spent so much time with an idea. So right now, kind of the role I play in my business, there's a lot of things that kind of take demands on my time, right? Which is anyone in any business. And so what I kind of feel myself is often just like a kind of just a machine that's me just like punching the air, right? Just like going and doing things. And I just need someone to like put me in a room, tell me to punch one object for an hour straight. And writing is basically doing that with an idea. It's saying, okay, I'm going to not think about anything other than this idea for the next hour. Whereas kind of left to our own devices, I'm just like a monkey mind clapping cymbals and doing nothing. So it's like, are you pounding pizza dough, metaphorically speaking? And are you actually making pizza, or are you just like punching the air? So it's like putting something useful. It's like actually putting a canvas in front of you so that like you can unleash your raw brain power in a way that you actually have something to show for the effort.
Right. I think generally speaking, other hacks may be to obviously educate yourself with books, audiobooks, podcasts, and use these ideas to spar against your thesis. And one that's not often talked about, which will nicely segue into our next topic, is biohacking and taking care of your brain. Once you do, you just reason better, you have a better memory, and you are just a better thinker. I think you invested or advised a nootropic company, or was that a drink with some special ingredient in it? Tell us a bit more about that one.
Yeah, that was a really fun experience. We didn't totally frame it as a nootropic, though I think it was effective for stamina, right? If your body's still feeling energetic, your mind is not going to wander, versus the negative self-talk comes in when you're ready to quit. So if your body is just physically not ready to quit, or like physically doesn't need to quit, then that self-talk never comes. So maybe it's an accidental nootropic. But what we sold was, it was called Aura, and it was the first RTJ. That's the Robert Trent Jones Trail. That's a golf thing. The first RTD, ready to drink, sports drink that contains the substance. So we're the first prepackaged drink that contains something called cluster dextrin. I had no influence over the product. I had no influence over the design. All of that was completely thought through and completely conceptualized before I entered the team. I just thought it was really cool and had a lot of relationships. It's actually my co-founder in Orbit is the original founder of that company as well. So someone I've known for a long time and have worked very closely with. And he said, I came to them and said, this product's really cool. More people should know about it. Let me help you market it. And I can like share about the product and its benefits. But ultimately, the reason we shut that company down was not because the product wasn't phenomenal, not because people didn't like it, but because there were too many cooks in the kitchen. None of us kind of was a clear owner in terms of like everyone had too little equity to care. And because we divided things too many ways. And then most of the team got jobs. We're all young. And basically what it would have taken to make that a real company would have been raising significant money and going all in. And we basically said, this was a great learning experience, but I don't want to raise significant money and go all in with this idea. I'd rather do something else. And we kind of all very peacefully came to that same conclusion and moved on with our lives. Right. But the product was awesome, man.
Same here. I had my nootropic, had to shut it down with one co-founder. Us, it's not that we were undivided, well, not divided the role properly and so forth. I was in charge of marketing and sales. He was in finance kind of, but it's just a hard market. And typically physical products are just way harder than SaaS or service-based business. And then that also segues nicely into the nice question I have for you, because you spent some time at Bitcoin Magazine. You're a crypto guy. You also spent some time at Inflection Point, which is, well, I see Pump Crypto Jobs there. You're a crypto guy, kind of. I have seen good, I have seen bad in crypto. I'm still a believer. I'm a believer in freedom, options, and simplicity. Why are you so obsessed with crypto?
So I think crypto is a movement with good intentions. So I think one thing crypto's done very well, and right, crypto is an extremely broad term, and Bitcoin's a subset of the crypto movement. And I always like really try to be specific with what I'm talking about. But I think one thing the whole crypto movement does well is identifies real problems. Like, I don't think that's the conversation that most people, when someone's criticizing Bitcoin, right? Most of the time, people are rarely saying the problem that this is trying to solve doesn't exist. It's a fake problem. No, that's like not the criticism you hear, right? The criticism you hear is like, this is the right solution to that problem, or this is a solution that we can trust, or it is likely that this solution will work out. Those usually where like the doubt sets in, or the solution is too complicated for people to adopt, which is a subset of the original point, right? Which is just like that the solution won't come to fruition and actually solve the problem. But I came to agree that the problems that crypto was created to solve are important, right? So that's like fundamental ideological alignment. The idea being that, for example, having, a select few unelected officials create and control the money supply in a way that's kind of transparent from the public and in a way that's kind of unpredictable and we don't really know what's going on, leads to poor decision making. That's like one, and that poor decision making has negative economic consequences. So that's the problem statement that I agree is like important to entertain solutions to. Another one, right, is that the predictability of the money supply. This is kind of the same point. The predictability of the money supply is important, and right now the money supply is unpredictable, and that leads to bad economic outcomes. And then other ones, right? Digital privacy. People should be able to continue to transact privately. And in an increasingly cashless society, you have an option for private digital transactions. I think that's important. So, and I'm not going to spell out the remainder of the problems, but the point is, I think that the people who kind of created this movement in the first place did a very good job of identifying genuine problems that are important to solve. And then I think Bitcoin specifically presents a lot of promise as a solution to several of those problems. So I advocate for it.
Right, which makes sense. Me, my experience with crypto so far, good and bad. It's still the far west, and for that reason, that really much justify my experience. For example, my dumbass self sent, I think it was 1,200 USDT 2 years ago to a Bitcoin wallet. I didn't know these things, and yeah, as a result, the money's lost, like straight up. And that was like in seconds. And yet I couldn't recuperate my money, so that I was kind of pissed mostly at myself. And the second thing, which is not related to the technicality of and the usefulness of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoins, for example, yeah, the people that founded Bitcoin, they had good intentions, but who's attracted to crypto generally? Mostly cowboys motivated by money and capitalism. So there's a very strong concentration of that. And if your only goal in life is to make money, you're going to make mostly dumb decisions because life is more than just money. And most people can't recognize human greed. And in crypto, we see lots of that, like the Bitcoin Lambos and so forth. It's pretty much greed that dictates a lot of the decisions. Actors want to talk about doing good while they can't even recognize their own greed. And I think that distorts the whole message and the progress of it all. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that first of all, for anyone listening to this conversation who's like interested in Bitcoin, Bitcoin's a tremendously diverse subject with a lot of different pieces to it. So for example, the kind of greedy money chasing, that's a piece of the community for sure. That's a big piece of the community, but it's also a small piece of the community, right? There's also just really fascinating innovation coming in, cryptography and cybersecurity and technology in general. That's fascinating ideas just about the fundamentals of finance. And then I think also the humanitarian angle of Bitcoin is something I did not speak to that is incredibly important for people to be aware of when discussing Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, obviously anything new, anything that's on the internet, anything that involves money is going to involve people who try to see if there's opportunities to use that newness to make money. But I think that's very, very much losing the plot and just not the point for so many people. So for example, again, it's about having a self-sovereign way to store the fruits of your labor and to store economic value. That's borderless. That's not dependent on any one particular country. That's not particular on any government or institution. And if you're in a society that the government decides to debase your currency overnight, to deflate your currency overnight because they have the power to do that, because they can just decide it's worth half, or they can just decide to issue double. That's something that a lot of people don't want to live with. So they'd prefer to keep their savings in a different system that plays by more fair rules. Or if suddenly, your money, and money is a word that also has a lot of definitions, but let's say your money is stored in a bank account in a country that no longer decides that you deserve to have your money because your opinions are not opinions that the government likes anymore, then they can say you no longer have your money. Some people, I think rightfully so, don't want to be that vulnerable to attack and would rather have their wealth stored somewhere else that they can keep more securely and leave the country without their bank accounts being frozen because their politics are suddenly less popular. So I think those plot points are very important when having a reasoned conversation about Bitcoin and crypto. And I would really encourage people to entertain those before, right, making like broad opinions about the whole industry and thinking, I'm not saying that that's the mistake you're making. I'm just saying like, well, I want someone listening to this to see the big picture as well. And I also want them to understand that I also have done a poor job of painting the big picture because the picture truly is that big. But those are
Right.
additional pieces of the puzzle that I thought are important to bring up.
Yeah, it's just the money thing is a bit more magnified. It's throughout society, right? We see it in VCs quite a lot too. We see these VCs influencers talk about stuff, but they have positions, or when you listen to the Winklevoss brothers, for example, talk about stuff, or even Balaji that I decided to unfollow yesterday, they're biased, and me, I'm just obsessed with finding the truth. And I think capitalism sometimes blurs out the truth, which is my point. But I do believe there's huge potential in all of it. And that also might be somewhat of a problem in crypto, that most of its value is future-based. It doesn't fix that much problem as of today. I think it will, just like most technology, but I often have that problem myself, talking about the future and Neuralink and space and all of these beautiful techs, but just that as of now, I think we just need to be more patient, but I do indeed have a lot of positive beliefs about it. My next question for you is more about another learning style of yours, which is the same that we're using you and I today to learn and get some insights, which is the podcast. First, I have a question, like, why did you decided to go with a co-host vs like hosting it by yourself?
So the beautiful thing about doing your own thing is you make all the rules. So I have a co-host. I sometimes do episodes without him because if it's easier to schedule with 2 people than 3, I'm just going to schedule with 2 people. So that's one of in the 3 years I've been working with Kyle for this podcast, that has been the singular and only point of friction we've ever had, is that it's really annoying to get 3 people to agree on being in the same place at the same time. It's just so challenging. And it's not necessary to make that a challenge, because we could just be like, hey, I'm making my own appointments. You can show up if it works for you, and you can do the same to me. And that way, 60% of the time, 75% of the time, it works out. We get there. But it's just those couple points where it's like so incredibly frustrating that, this guest that you put so much energy into getting says yes. And then your co-host is like, I can't, it's my mom's birthday. And then you suddenly hate their mom. And it's like, these are really perverse incentives for me to end up being upset with your mom for having a birthday. And we solved that problem by making it not a requirement for us to both be on every episode. And ever since then, we've never disagreed about anything to this day. That's not quite true, obviously, but and nothing, no actual real rub. The other reason is just, again, most things stem out of a story. And Kyle and myself were best friends going into the podcast, kind of pre-existing, and we had a in-person habit of taking inspiring people, mentors within our community, out to dinner with friends, because we enjoyed these conversations with people who knew things we didn't know and learning from them. And then when the pandemic had started, or the pandemic, I got to air quote it, when the period of time we all collectively understand when I say the word COVID or when I say the word under pandemic, right? Because everyone has their own opinions about what went on. But that period of time, March of 2020 came around, we were no longer, it was no longer as straightforward, let's say, to make these dinners happen. So we said, let's just do the 2 of us on Zoom with the guests and not worry about the other 4 friends in the group. So it kind of just happened organically, and it made sense to continue doing it together. And at the time, and still to this day, we each have divergent interests. He has things he's interested in really strongly that I'm only mildly interested in. So I learn a lot by listening to him be an expert with another expert, right? He loves real estate. So learning about him and real estate, and I get to participate in those conversations since the ask questions, but not be the lead. That's awesome. And likewise, right, I'm very skilled with technology and software, and he likes it, but he's not a programmer, but he can still participate in those conversations in a constructive way. So it is still like a, 1 + 1 = 3 or 4 type deal.
Really cool. 150 plus interview. I think you mentioned 200 at the start of this call, a bunch of YouTube subscribers and views. So congrats on that. You've interviewed guests such as Steph Smith, Dickie Bush, Tiago Forte, which has been one of my favorite authors in the last couple of years. What have been some of your best episodes or best insights that you got out of the pod?
The biggest lesson I've learned in terms of business, let's go with that one, because maybe there's lessons about happiness and lessons about fitness or whatever. But in terms of like actual business and entrepreneurship, the biggest lesson I've learned 100% is that life is easier when you start by solving a problem versus when you start with an idea.
Short and sweet. I very much like that one. Early stage investor as well, via Republic, Maven, which is a company I think that my first million boys invested in, Gumroad, which is somewhat controversial with the 10% commission they charge. I'm not sure if they still go that way. And Fluent Pet, what have you learned from investing, and why did you decided to invest in these companies precisely?
Yes. So I don't want to oversell the size of these checks, right? And even the word checks is probably overselling the level of contribution I've made. For people who know what Republic is, they know I'm advertising that fairly. But Republic's just like a crowdfunding investing platform for startups. And honestly, the biggest the biggest benefit of this is that people see that I have the word investor in my LinkedIn profile and then send me deals. And
Love
just
it.
because their automated outreach, right, goes to anyone who's an investor or an angel investor. And even the way I do have it advertised on LinkedIn, I think is accurate. It says small but mighty bets, right? Small but mighty. And I'm still at the beginning of my career. I'm not writing life-changing money to any of these companies. And Maven, I interviewed Wes KO, who's the founder of Maven. I had her on my podcast well before Maven was conceived as an idea. I thought she was brilliant. I thought she had great ideas. I thought she had great energy. I thought she had a really awesome skill set. So when she launched a company, and I was able to develop somewhat of a personal relationship with her after the podcast, right? We corresponded via email, followed each other on social media. So she was someone I was able to like communicate with and was continually impressed by. So when she started a company, I wanted to, I was bullish, as they say in crypto. I was like, Wes is brilliant. She's going to do good things. And I'm also someone who loves learning online. I'm very bearish on the traditional education system. I think it's got a lot of problems. And Maven presents an interesting alternative in a lot of use cases. So that was kind of the thesis there. The other ones were a bit more YOLO bets. I just thought it would be cool for dogs to talk. So I don't even know how much money I sent to Fluent Pet, nor have I checked in on it. I think that was kind of just like that was a bit of a YOLO, as a bit of a more of a sling. And I was like, well, if they could, I saw this, that was like I saw a TikTok, and I'm not even on TikTok. It was probably like a TikTok posted to Twitter, but I saw a TikTok of someone and her dog was pressing these buttons. I was like, that's so cool. Dogs are so cool. They're communicating. I want in. And that was like I don't know how fast the money left my wallet faster than my brain knew what to do with my other hand or something. And that's pretty much the stories there.
You have a dog. What do you do in your free time?
I don't have a dog. My family has a dog. My roommate and I briefly had a dog here, but it didn't work out.
What do
wasn't
you
a
do in
culture
your
fit.
free time? Do you chill? Do you train? What do you do? Do you meditate?
All the above. All the above. Meditate. So I work with a holistic performance coach kind of across personal and business. And part of working with him is doing daily visualization, 15 minutes daily, including weekends. Been very diligent with that, probably 22 of the past 25 days. And I love fitness. I love pickleball, which is kind of the trendy sport right now. I love racquetball. I love any racket sport, tennis, ping pong. Those are the big four. I love going to the gym. I love running. I love doing like 5Ks and like road races. I like rucking, so putting on a weight vest. Any physical activity. And then, of course, I do have a really great friend group here. I like hosting parties, I like hosting mixers, meetups, networking events. I like people. I like doing the podcast, right? That is not something I directly make a lot of money from. Obviously, I develop relationships that often lead to business, but primarily that is an endeavor motivated for the sake of learning.
I was about to say next time I go to Vegas, we need to go play some tennis or something. Pickleball, yeah, kind of. It's fun. But yeah, I prefer tennis way more. The thing is, I might not come back to Vegas because my experience wasn't the best. I thought it was just like it was just too much, too much over the top. What was your experience with Vegas? I see the Mirage cap right there. Like, do you love Vegas?
Yeah, I mean, Vegas has exactly what you want. You just have to know how to find it. It's a city that delivers on its promises. It is advertised well. If you want chaotic parties, right? Chaotic parties. If you want gorgeous resorts and pools, gorgeous resorts and pools. If you want to gamble, you can gamble. If you want great food, there's great food. If you want great shows, there's great shows. And I think people just, right? It's kind of like, the saying, like, people don't have business problems, they have personal problems. I think it's the same thing with Vegas. No offense. I don't mean to I think the implication of that's not very kind, but people don't have it's just like, yeah, like if you had a bad time in Vegas, it's because you just screwed up. I don't know. It's like, it's on you. Like the no part of Vegas isn't transparent. It's like, it's not cheap. It's not necessarily quote good for the soul. If you go gamble and get belligerent and stay up all night, like, you're not going to make good decisions. That's part of the appeal. It's like when someone like, it's the meme of someone like has the bicycle and they're riding the bicycle and then they stick a tire in the wheel and they fall off and they get mad at the bicycle. It's like, you knew exactly, like, this is advertised. It's like the movie The Hangover. People are like mad when they actually have bad things happen to them when they make poor choices. I'm like, I don't know. So I love Vegas. It's a beautiful city. There's plenty of fun to do, and you get what you ask for.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't a bad experience or bad things happening to me, but for example, seeing all these injury lawyers panels by the airport saying if you get injured in Vegas, like go call us. It's just like perversion, like all over the place.
Of
But
incentives is, yeah.
yeah, I mean, when people
Sin City, right? That's not,
blame casinos when they got too drunk and fell on their ass, you know. Uh, but it was still very nice. I enjoyed some aspect of it, and I've derived a lot of not lessons but insights out of it. It was certainly a different city and city of capitalism, kind of. Last question for you, Orbit Metrics. Like, why do you decide to spend most of your time on that venture?
I mean, I think it's really practical, right? So like I said, what I've learned is that when you start your business based on solving problems, your life is better than when you start your business based on just trying to put your ideas into the world for no reason besides the fact that you want to. So Orbit's entire purpose as a business is to solve problems for our clients, right? And the commonalities between those are, data analytics, software engineering, problems in that space. So again, my goal is young. I want to be young, self-employed, autonomous. And this is a super effective vessel for doing that. That of course helps businesses enable growth by removing tech bottlenecks. It's a win-win-win for everybody. And I learn a ton from doing it. I have fun. I pay the bills. It's great. Couldn't ask for anything better.
I run my agencies mostly for data purposes. I call it my lab. I test out a bunch of things. Do you do the same with the data you gather?
There was a siren, so I was letting that pass. I mean, yeah, I think primarily up until now, we've primarily served as an enabler, right? Where we give people automated reporting, automated dashboards, build data pipelines so that they have the data in a really easy, workable way and can make decisions. We have not, with too many teams, actually become involved strategically, more of like, right, as the analyst. We've started to roll out some of those offers where we also sit down with you with your data and start to like think about it and help you make decisions. But that's a newer initiative.
Got it. Where can people find out more about you, Louis?
Yeah, my website, louisshulman.com. You can Google me. You can find me on Twitter. And I'm generally pretty responsive to DMs, emails, all of those things. Of course, it has to make sense. But sometimes people send you the wackest things. Like, I don't know, there's like a critical threshold. Once I hit like 900 Twitter followers, I started getting crazy DMs. But I'm on Twitter. Orbit Metrics is at orbitmetrics.io. I'm good at the SEO game. You can just look up anything related to me on Google and I will be the right result.